Hey everybody, welcome to the Ark Update. Happy New Year to you. And as many of us had spent time with family over this holiday season, we figured it'd be a great time to talk a little bit about the Ark family. So we have a very special guest with us today, the founder of Ark Transportation, George Hurst. And as always, we got Andrew.
Hey everybody, how are you?
And you probably know this if you've worked with Ark at all, but Andrew is George's son.
That's true.
Yeah, one of George's sons.
He is.
Yep.
So George, today we wanted to talk a little bit about you, about kind of your background, how you started Ark, give you some questions and that. I think people would love to hear that. So my first question for you is, when's the first time you loaded a truck?
I was about 8 years old.
8?
8 years
Okay.
old. And my father was in the trucking business. And he used to take me to the airport. And he would be loading trucks, and I would help him load the trucks.
Yeah.
Yeah, started at 8 every Sunday. That's what we did. Sunday afternoons, and then sometimes Saturdays. But
What was the price of gas back then?
geez, quarter.
Yeah.
Yeah, probably about 25 cents a gallon.
Yeah. Now, so
The good old days.
I know,
Child
right?
labor and cheap gas.
yeah. So this was a family business, obviously.
Not this.
Okay.
My father drove a truck for a company called Leaseways, and then they were going to get rid of that company, and so he decided to buy it. And by coincidence, it was named Andrews Air Freight. That
Started
was
out then, baby.
There you go.
That was the name of it. And so he had that until he passed away in '66. So he had approximately about 6-7 years.
Gotcha. Okay.
So that's like the background of all the air freight in the family.
Yeah. So at one point, if I recall, when you've told me this before, you guys had an exclusive contract in Cleveland for air freight.
Yes, you couldn't pick up or deliver for the airlines. We were the only ones that were able to do that because it's a contract, and that's just the way it was. Nobody was ever allowed to go in and pick. You can go in sometimes to pick up, but you could never pick up from a company and bring it to the airlines. And never take it from the airlines to a company unless it was private and you had a contract with the airlines.
Wow. So that's how you started out driving?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
And then eventually, I know you went to work for another company where you drove for a while.
Mm-hmm.
And then what made you take the leap to start Ark Transportation?
Last company I was working for, it was called Amerford Air Cargo, and they started to not produce quality transportation, and so the customers that I developed, I asked if they would, go with me if I started my own forwarding company, and they said yes, they would, and so that's how it started in 1991.
That's great.
Well, the other part of the story, and I think this is the best part of it, is like Amerford was, as a company, was struggling. It wasn't just Cleveland, because Amerford was a big company.
Okay.
They had 20-some
They're
locations.
worldwide.
I mean, they had a lot of
Yeah.
locations.
Yeah.
So they're a big organization. Cleveland was just a franchise of them.
Gotcha.
And I think in the past you'd mentioned you've seen kind of writing on the wall. They started, their lack of service or whatever was they were either cutting people, their consolidations going out of Chicago were delayed. Stuff was just in their network was just slowing down, and they weren't putting forth the effort you would expect. But as the story was told to me over all these years, right, like they made the decision to start Ark Transportation, but really the impetus of the idea, or actually the way it was able to start, was, the 20 years prior of how many years did you drive the truck total for Amerford? Or just
For Amerford, it was 21 years.
21 years. So the 21 years prior to driving a truck every single day, building the rapport with these customers was really what allowed kind of Ark Transportation to happen, because you can't just go out and hang out your shingle back then. You have to have, back then even more so than even today, your relationships with the people on the docks are what got you freight. Nowadays, it's very hard to get, the dock workers or even like the warehouse supervisor. He doesn't always have say in how they move freight. But back then, they would,
Right.
If you knew Tony on the dock, Tony would give you
Right.
freight.
Yeah.
And so you built these relationships. So they all liked George back then. Nowadays, who knows?
Still do. They still love him.
I don't think any of them are alive right now. But yeah, going back then, we were able to go through the back door, a lot of manufacturers, and basically we would just call it hustling freight.
Yeah.
We'd go in there, drop off bills, say, hey, we're here every day around between 3 and 4 o'clock, and it kind of like was easier to do back then, going through the back door.
Yeah.
A lot of shippers gave their men in the back authority to just move freight, just get it out the door, whatever you want. You know? And prices were back then actually were fixed prices because the government had specific pricing for your trucks and for your air freight. And so that was before deregulation.
Yeah.
And so it was kind of like, if you like the person, if you like the company service, almost all the pricing was the same, other than special contracts.
Yeah. There's another story though I'd love for you to tell, and one of our customers I know had a unique problem with air freight that just pretty much every forwarder was told them, sorry, there's nothing you can do. You had a unique solution to figure that out.
Yeah, it was a customer of ours that had these 12-foot, and actually it was two customers. One had up to 40-foot rolls, and the other one had up to 12-foot. The 12-foot ones were lighter and harder to go because they were going more places, you know, more destinations than others.
Basically, nobody wanted to take this freight, right? Because everything had to be done manually. So some of these tubes, like he mentioned, they were 20 foot long, and the average I think was about 20 foot long.
That was Metro Media technology.
Yeah, so Metro Media was there were these 20 foot long
up to 40
rolls.
foot.
Yeah, exactly. But I think the average was about 20,
the average
18,
was
something like
16
that.
foot.
So 16
but
foot
they would
rolls,
keep on going up.
and these things weighed 400
160
pounds,
to
like that.
the 40 footers are up to 800 pounds.
Yeah, and these things they wanted air freight.
Yeah.
Because this was back before you had digital signage. So these, like on the side of the freeways, so these are like the big landmark signs you see. These were the graphics that they would put up there.
Wow. Yeah.
So they were all printed. They needed to all be air freighted out. So they would do runs down there. What time did you pick up in the morning?
We would pick up.
I mean,
at
night.
We got in there about 9 o'clock.
9 o'clock.
And then probably finished about 11 o'clock loading.
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 Then come back
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Then come back here and dump everything at the airlines that same night, you know.
And this was a 3-man operation at the time you were doing that?
No, the one driver went out.
I'm saying total people working here.
Oh, yeah, it was 3.
3. Yeah.
And they were and that truck would be loaded with 10,000 pounds of tube of these rolls.
That's what they were, just long tubes.
Yeah, of graphics basically.
That's cool.
A couple of the other forwarders had a problem. They folded them
Oh,
to get them in the planes. And when they got there, they were no good. And sometimes the traffic manager told me they would cut them in half, thinking that it was okay. That it was ridiculous.
But one of the unique things I think that comes from that is, first off, Ark, like since its founding, has always had this kind of concept of like solve the problem. Like, it might not fit perfectly into the little express box, but solve the problem.
Right.
No matter what it is, always try to provide a solution. And that was taught to me, you know, even as a kid, that's kind of was like always taught to me. But what Ark does, I think what was interesting was there was, you know, the airlines weren't necessarily taught how to move this material from day one. But over the years of Ark continuing to push this material in the Cleveland markets and stuff, they started to understand how to actually maneuver these goods. So, you know, there's a lot of technical terms like tilt loading and different ways you can load airlines. And so when we would actually call them up, or we would physically go to the airport and tell them, hey, these items need to be tilt loaded, they would understand and be like, oh, okay. But that's because as a forwarder, we have a hands-on approach in a lot of ways. We have our own warehouses, we have our own truck, those types of things. And being basically a material handler driver for as many years as he had, that's I think the vision he always had with like, the paperwork is all good and fair, which is typically what a forwarding office is right? A bunch of people who make paperwork. But having that practical knowledge allowed the problem to be solved because you understand what actually needs to happen with the goods. So in turn, being able to work with the vendors, you know, so little stuff, buying these guys pizza, buying the handlers pizza on a Friday when you know you're gonna have to make them wait late. A super cheap investment for what they were able to help us do and help
relationship
accomplish.
With airlines was very important. And like I said, when we would take that stuff there, the first few times they said it wouldn't fit. Well, they were looking, it would fit in the belly. There's 2 doors on a lot of these aircraft. There's an aft door and a forward door. And so we've decided we're going to go through the forward door because it has a lot more length where you can push in from the side. But we had to show them how to do that because they didn't do this before, you know. But it worked out real well, and that lasted for quite a long time. Then.
Yeah.
And then we started folding them and putting them in boxes, and then they went to digital. So.
There you go.
But our other company, we started with 12-foot material.
We kind of specialize that.
Yeah,
I mean, we do a lot of
what
long,
it was I think,
overland.
yeah. The philosophy is don't refuse any freight.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We will get it there no matter what it takes, because if this is my philosophy, was that if anybody can get it there, we can get it there.
Yeah.
And if somebody else had it before us, then we know they had to get it there. So it was like just a no-brainer. You just do it. You get it and do it and figure it out.
Yeah.
And I think that's where we still stand today. Figure it out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, even if you go back to the previous question, not to continue go back over it, but starting out, he didn't he doesn't have a degree, he doesn't have a business degree. It's not like he knew, oh, this is how you run a business day one. And it really started with, he worked his last correct me if I'm wrong, I think you worked your last day Friday,
Right.
basically bought a truck over the weekend and started making pickups on Monday.
Yeah. Wow.
Right.
And the rest of it was just like, well, we're going to figure this out, right?
Yeah.
And we had people that came in and out of our lives, whether it was an accountant or an operations person or whatever, as an organization early in the years that helped along the process. And those types of things, we're blessed with, number one, as a company and as individuals, but ultimately just that grind, because to start, you were working on average, 18 hours a day, 6 days a week?
20 hours a day. I'd get home. I start about 6 in the morning, get home about 2 in the morning.
And then he was he did driving and
driving.
operations.
Yeah, I had to do everything.
Did you have a cell phone? Did you have a cell phone when you started, or was that a couple years in?
No, I actually got a cell phone like about 2 months later, a big box cell phone, because I needed to communicate with everybody. The airlines, to say I'm coming to drop off, shippers calling me, or any emergencies.
Yeah. So 18 to 20 hours a day, was that just you?
No, on the weekends, Joey, my oldest son, my best son,
His best son.
would come.
His name is Joe, by the way. Joe.
Joey.
Joe.
Yeah, he
His
would come.
favorite son. Not his best looking son, but his favorite son.
He was at college at Akron getting a engineering degree.
Yeah. Obviously the smart one of the family.
But he would come home on Friday nights after school, and we'd work till about 2 in the morning, 3 in the morning, and he would unload, and offload, and so that was part of. The rest of the time though it was me, and sometimes one of the other operations guys would come out and help. But
Gotcha. Well, so Andrew, how did you get started on this? Was it punishment or something? Did you get in trouble at home? You had to go to work in the back or what?
It's funny. You talk to people in the freight industry, and everybody's like, "Oh yeah, I just was going to do this for a couple years," and it's like 20 years later. So I've been here, like full time. I've been here 18 or 19 years, something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But it was never supposed to be, what I was going to do. Not because I didn't want to do it, but just because I didn't really know what it was about. But when I was younger, obviously, you worked in the back. We'd have projects, build stuff, whatever, label stuff, handle paperwork, those types of things.
Yeah.
As a kid, you do that. But it wasn't until, I think I was 18 or 19. I think I was 18, 19 years old.
18, 19 years old.
When I came to work, and I was just working in the back. I was like I was between jobs. I was going to be basically computer science. I wanted to do programming, that sort of stuff. And I had an off semester, and I started working here just in the back because of some free time, I guess. And one of the guys didn't come in one day in operations, and I kind of slid into his seat, like literally just to answer phones. And within a couple days after that, I was like, I love this, just because
You're hooked.
it's like he said, we never say no. So every day you're solving a problem. And while, you might have 95% of the same problems every single day, there's always that 5% that's unique or different. Mm-hmm. So it keeps you engaged trying to solve problems. So I don't know if it's in my blood where this is third, fourth generation
it's blood
stuff. Because
all my brothers were in the business.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Of course, my father, and I think it's something in the blood.
Yeah, where you just gravitate to it.
And then you talk to people in the business that have been in the business, it's like, whatever made you do this?
Right.
You know, there's this other side of it that, you know, a lot of apprehension, I guess, would be the not to do it again or something.
Yeah, there's not many people who are proud of their choice, but they're still in the industry. I will say that's changing, obviously.
Yes, it's totally
kids are
different
going
now.
to school now for supply chain.
It's
It's
big time,
Oh.
and there's a lot of jobs that are unfilled, and there's still a lack of people getting into it, but it is
Yeah.
growing, which
Yeah.
is great.
And it is, but it's a lot different than I would say even 20 years ago when I started. 20 years ago, it was blue collar. It was, you made a mistake somewhere in your life if you kind of were working in the industry, unless you were like, an executive at UPS.
Yeah.
For the most part, it was like, yeah, you probably aren't going to do too much. But now, I mean, everybody is clamoring to it because they realize the entire world needs this to run.
Yeah.
It's no longer the dirty thing in the basement. This is now required. If you want to operate your business efficiently, you need to have the partners, whether they are an air freight forwarder, whatever it might be, you have to have those partners in your suite of vendors to be able to successfully accomplish what you're trying to do as a company. And that's, parcel carrier, everybody.
Yeah.
That's just how it works nowadays.
And it's amazing how it's changed business so much in the last 20 years by it being raised up to this priority issue.
Yeah.
And now all of our expectations are we want things immediately. Things should be given to us quickly and shipped fast, and it's pretty amazing.
Absolutely.
So Andrew, you said you started working, you filled in for a few days. When did you know, though, logistics is what you wanted to do?
So
He birthed the package.
I physically birthed the package. Have you guys ever seen Kung Fu Panda when you have the noodle dream? I had the freight dream. I'm pretty sure I had the freight dream. I woke up in a cold sweat one day and I was like, this is what I'm doing for the rest of my life. No, I think I was scheduled to go back to school to finish up my degree. And I just was like, what am I doing this for? Like, I think there's so much value in solving these complicated logistics problems. And at the time, we needed additional help. So I took a semester off, and that semester turned into 18 years later, where I decided, and we had a conversation because not everybody wanted me to go do freight, right?
Yeah.
Like they thought, let's do something different. And, we had a discussion about it. I'm like, this is what I want to do. And that started it where it was, it started out as operations and then all the way up to where we are today. So just little by little growing and learning more about the business, not just how to move freight, but also the business application of it, like how to run a business more efficiently and effectively in the freight world with that sort of mindset. So, when you start looking at businesses, pretty much all businesses operate the same way. And that's what intrigued me about this was simply because I love the problem it solves, but also there's this business aspect and how you have to manage different things like cash flow and personnel that are, maybe a little more complex in certain ways. But also, it just made sense to me. The world just makes sense when I look at it through the lens of logistics. That's how it works.
Yeah. Well, that's amazing when you walk into that and those lights go on and you just go, this makes sense.
It's in your blood, man.
Yeah.
It's in your blood.
There's another thing, too, about the business, though, that you don't want somebody in it unless you know they can do it. And it's called like an air freight sense. And he had it. And I've had people there before, worked with people that did not have it. And there's this kind of like, it's almost like you could look at a puzzle and automatically know where the pieces go. And if you can't figure out where the pieces go, you will figure it out before you leave that day, because that's just the way. And he was able to do that. When you can sit there and think out of the box, like I found out Andrew can do, it was like, okay, he has to be here, So that was part of the decision that he made to stay.
Yeah.
And I encouraged him because I thought he can do that,
Yeah.
So he decided,
Yeah.
So he couldn't become a lawyer or a doctor.
No.
Yeah.
Just an average lawyer or a doctor.
Well, now I'm getting visions of like The Beautiful Mind, seeing Andrew just putting the pieces
Well,
together, the light coming on him and saying he's the one.
What's that Tom Cruise movie where he's got the table and he's moving all this
Minority
stuff?
Report.
Minority Report. It was kind of
That's
like
what you
that. That
gotta
was my
do.
pretty much every day.
That's great. Well, you guys have worked successfully as a family for a long time now, ever since you've been in the business. What's the secret to a healthy father-son working relationship?
I think it is. There's a term that you with your wife, you never go to bed with an argument or mad at each other, and I think we do the same thing with work.
Yeah.
If we get aggravated at each other or get mad about something, we cut it right away, and that's business has to go on and our personal relationship, I mean, has to go on, and the business has to just thrive no matter what, you know. So we put all that stuff aside. So I'll tell him to get out.
Yeah.
Go home.
That's pretty much it. I think it's like from my point of view, it's
Yeah.
humility.
A lot of humility.
A lot of
Yes.
humility, where you just, where you feel you're getting stepped on, or you're getting, disrespected or whatever. When really we both want to do what we feel is the most impactful thing for the organization.
Yeah.
Ultimately for the customer at the end of the day. And we might have a different approach or a different angle, but usually we end up in the same spot. And there's not many times.
No, I swallow my pride all the time. So.
Yeah. You're the only one. I think though ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's just it's what it is. Knowing that the other person isn't out to get you, and having trust. I mean, at any point somebody can always screw you or get the better of you or whatever it might be, whatever the proper term would be. And it's just trusting that they're not going to, because the other one's going to kill them. Maybe that's what's made it successful. We just know the other person would kill the other person.
That's great.
That's all.
Yeah.
That's what it comes down to. I do think there's just that element of wanting best for each other too.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not in competition to
Right.
do anything. And,
Yeah.
So I think it's not, I think that's part of the issue.
Yeah.
Part of the way it works out effectively. It's just wanting what's best for each other.
Next question for you guys is, Ark's been around long enough where you guys have seen several very difficult markets, and you've seen companies that were around are no longer around. I mean, how have you guys been able to keep afloat and keep thriving through difficult times in those markets at Ark?
I think first of all, we always worked with like a mean and lean attitude, and our customer base was diverse, and I think that helped us a lot, And where we've seen big companies fold over 31 years, and almost all the companies I worked for folded, and they were huge multinational companies. And to be here for 31 years, there's got to be a plan, to make sure that we don't fall apart. And I think having the relationship with all the customers, having the relationship with all of us working at Ark together, that we produced was what it was, and that's kept us going through the lean times.
Yeah.
Always worked out.
Yeah.
How about you, Andrew? What do you think?
Well, I mean, we talk about this all the time, just being blessed as an organization. Like we work hard, but we also believe that, you do the right thing, and you should always do the right thing. And that comes back in terms of, as an organization, how we both treat our people, treat our customers, so that when those lean times come, we're able to, circumnavigate them successfully. But ultimately, I think part of it is we're blessed, right? We've always been blessed. We've had customers that were, number one customers, just literally close up or completely change their business plan. And, we sit across from each other going, what are we going to do? So after we get done crying and praying about it, we go in to solve the problem. And we've always had, the next customer come into the fold that helps helps plug that problem. And then we always gain more the next year. So when you look at stuff like 9/11, right? 9/11, a lot of air freight companies, like the airplanes were grounded. What do? We shift stuff over, and we're running stuff on expedited vehicles all over the U.S. You look at, a couple cycles, 2008, 2009, when everything crashed, we had more air freight that year, I think, than ever before. So it just happens accordingly. Last year, we had a plan regarding how our business needed to be structured. End of 2019, middle of 2019, we started structuring this plan of Ark moving into a different couple different areas where more commoditized freight is, and because we're specialized, right? We do the trade show, we do the high value stuff, and we started moving into more commoditized freight market. And wouldn't you know it, COVID hits, right? But we already had this plan in place through either divine intervention or whatever. But we had this plan in place to where within a few months that plan was actually executed, and we ended up carrying through the end of the year of 2020 and then into 2021. Kind of as a steamroller, not nearly as affected as a lot of our counterparts were that weren't in the last mile parcel delivery. Last mile parcel delivery absolutely made out, but there's a lot of air freight forwarders, especially in our size band, that closed up simply because they could not support what they were doing. Whereas we've made decisions, invested in technology, invested in infrastructure across the board, people, tech, whatever it might be, to effectively maneuver through these. So proper planning, proper execution, and the desire to continue to grow. Like, while, from the outside looking in, people would say, or not outside looking in, while sometimes people can look at smaller organizations that are growing and say, oh, that's a lifestyle business, we don't view ourselves as a lifestyle business. It's not at the end of the year, ownership collects all the cash and goes off, to the Bahamas, trips. We just have never operated that way. We continually reinvest in equipment. Most air freight forwarders don't have their own assets. We do. And we do all this to support our customers, but also to make us, obviously, more effective during the downtimes, right? Because we know if we own our own assets, nobody can say, no, I don't have capacity, because that, to us, like we said, we always pick up the freight. We always move it number one. So for us, making those decisions have always been put ahead of everything else. And I think those decisions have helped us, whether we knew it or not, they helped us kind of circumvent getting really pummeled by what a lot of the other industry had been hit multiple times with. Yeah. Because a lot of businesses in this industry, and not to belabor this, but they trade on margin. I mean, they live in the margin. And we just haven't. We've never gone in debt for anything as an organization. We just made the decision not to do that. And we don't plan on doing it anytime soon. And we just make sure the cash flow's right, the income statements are good, and balance sheets work. Yeah. That's what it is.
So what's in store for Ark in 2022?
What's in store?
More growth. Looking ahead for a lot of new business coming in, and has a lot to do with technology. So I think we're headed in the right direction because of it,
Yeah.
And still going to stay diverse, though. We're never going to, I don't think we should ever go back to, we never really did, but just to make sure we don't put all our eggs in one basket.
Yeah.
I agree.
Well, that's going to wrap up this update. Thank you guys so much for watching. And from everyone at Ark, we wish you a happy and healthy new year. Hope 2022 is the best year yet.
Yep. Thank you, everyone.
Yep, thank you.